Congratulations, Jessica, really, congratulations. Thank you. No, it's really a joyous occasion. Let me hold the baby too. My in-laws were fussing over my sister's daughter as if it were their own grandchild. Congratulations, Jessica. Thank you, David. Here, this is a $6,000 gift for the baby. The amount caused a stir among the relatives. That's not surprising, considering for David, it was a lavish amount for the baby of his wife's sister. I also think it's strange. I mean, giving $6,000 to your own child? Well, if you say it like that, it sounds like the baby is mine. Jessica's in-laws and David responded in a fluster, but she was clear in her reply. What? Isn't the baby yours? Why would you say otherwise? Huh? Her words turned the celebration into an uproar. I'm Susan Thompson, 27 years old. I work mostly from home as a programmer. I used to work for a major IT company, but when I got married 3 years ago, I went independent and became a freelancer. My skills as a software engineer are well regarded, and even after leaving, I still take on projects from my former company, as well as individual clients. I must say, I'm quite in demand and lead a busy, fulfilling life. However, amidst this lifestyle, there's one thing that's a bit bothersome, or rather, makes me sigh. The issue of having children. My husband David and I have been struggling to conceive, and my in-laws often make snide remarks about it. They also disapprove of my continuing to work. They believe if I truly wanted children, I should become a stay-at-home wife and focus on fertility treatments. I'm constantly dealing with unexpected phone calls and visits from my in-laws. It's always me who has to respond. Hey, could you ask your parents to give us a heads up before coming over? Why? I have work too, and it's hard to host them on such short notice. I'd like to have the house tidy. Can you tell them to stop dropping by unannounced? I tried to subtly tell David that these visits were a nuisance, but he didn't take it seriously. What's the big deal? We're family. No one minds if things are a bit messy. Unbelievable. I lean towards minimalism. I can't relax unless unnecessary items are disposed of immediately. My closet has just a few clothes, and aside from work documents, I mostly use ebooks. Everything around me is really simple. In contrast, David's room is a mess. He leaves cardboard boxes and packing materials lying around. When I try to clean up, he insists he still needs them. We live in an apartment with separate rooms. Mine is almost empty and always clean, but David's room is hopeless. It's cluttered and dusty. When I try to clean it, he gets angry and tells me to stay out. Yet, my in-laws suggest that if I can't keep the house clean, I should quit my job and focus on housework. Why is David's room so dirty, Susan? Why don't you clean it? I'd like to, but David won't let me. Excuses. A dirty house is the homemaker's responsibility. If you can't handle it, quit your job and focus on being a housewife. It's a no-win situation. You look like you think we're picking on you. Modern daughters-in-law are so troublesome. We're just trying to teach you how to be a good wife. You should understand that. If Susan understood her role, we wouldn't need to say these things. She looks like she thinks she's a victim, which is just pitiful. David just sits there, nodding along to his parents' words, never taking my side. According to them, the second chapter of How to Be a Good Wife is about producing an heir as soon as possible. In the old days, if a wife didn't have a child within 3 years, she was sent away. Speaking of which, it's almost been 3 years since you got married. I still think Susan should quit her job and devote herself to being a housewife. The way things are, it's like David isn't capable enough. It's probably just because she wants her own spending money. A woman's earnings are insignificant. How long will she keep up this selfishness for some pocket change? They both pressure me to quit my job. Finally, David speaks up. Well, nowadays women work too. I think it's fine for her to keep working a bit longer. David, you're too soft. That's why Susan keeps taking advantage. Maybe you should be a bit stricter. Exactly. We're teaching Susan how to be a good wife in your place. Look at that dissatisfied face. After a bit of scolding David, my in-laws sigh and finally conclude their lecture on how to be a good wife. In reality, David's income alone is not enough to sustain our current lifestyle. I've considered exposing this fact, but I've been holding back because David has been pleading with me. Please, I want to look good in front of my parents. Please. I'm begging you, just like this. Please. I'll try to earn more, just hold on until then. He begged so desperately that I reluctantly kept silent, but there's no sign of his salary increasing. I'm nearly at the end of my patience. During such a frustrating time, my in-laws came to know about something that worsened their snide remarks. I have an elder sister named Jessica, who is 28 and has 3 sons. Jessica married early, right after high school graduation. Her partner was a classmate, and it was what you'd call a shotgun wedding. However, she divorced when her first child was still young. After her second marriage, which was also a shotgun wedding, she divorced again. Now, she is on her third marriage, living with her third husband and 3 children. To be honest, I don't really get along well with Jessica. Frankly, we're not on good terms. Her poor behavior and selfishness are the reasons. She has caused our parents so much trouble. I don't know the exact reasons for her divorces, but I suspect it's due to her infidelity. And I think our parents might have paid her alimony. But since our parents don't talk about it, I never asked. And prefer to keep my distance from her. Yet, one day when my in-laws were visiting, Jessica happened to come over. I thought of leaving the kids with mom and dad, but they were out. Can you take care of them instead? She said this abruptly, bringing her 3 children over. Just at that moment, my in-laws were in the middle of lecturing me about how to be a good wife. Oh my, is this Susan's sister? And look, she has 3 children. Well, look at these lively kids. Having 3 is indeed enviable. Hello, I'm Jessica, Susan's sister. She has been a great help. For some reason, Jessica hit it off with my in-laws. Susan, you never told us about such a... Indeed. She doesn't look like a mother of 3. So young and pretty. Thank you. I don't know why they took to each other, but they were chatting away. So, Jessica, do you work? I'm a stay-at-home mom. That's wonderful. Nowadays, women talk about working and neglect their homes, but you're commendable. Jessica never worked a day since high school. Her first husband's parents enrolled him in a college where all he needed to do was sign his name, and they also took care of Jessica and her child. 3 years later, she divorced and soon remarried when she became pregnant with her second husband's child, only to divorce again 4 years later. She immediately remarried her current husband after becoming pregnant again. It wasn't that she didn't want to work, she never had the chance or the need to. Susan, you should learn a thing or two from your sister. Indeed. You could use some of her wisdom. It seemed like how to be a good wife would now include learning from your sister. From that day, Jessica began visiting often with her children, seemingly coordinating with my in-laws. Really, David should have married Jessica. Then these adorable 3 kids might have been our grandchildren. Exactly. Otherwise, our family might end without an heir. Jessica seemed pleased with the praise from my in-laws and would leave with some pocket money after basking in their attention. This became a routine. During these times, the care of her children was always dumped on me. Susan, take good care of the children. Yes, it'll be good for you to awaken your maternal instincts. It's good practice for you too. After several instances, I reached my breaking point. I work from home, not just idly spending my time. I repeatedly tried to explain this, but it was ignored. Enough already. Tell your parents not to come to our house. I appealed to David, but he just seemed annoyed. Your sister comes over too, it's not fair to tell only my parents not to come. That's why I don't want either of them coming over. I can't work like this. Are you okay with me quitting my job? That would be a problem. David knew well that we couldn't maintain our lifestyle if I stopped working. Perhaps that's why he acted quickly this time. Somehow, he managed to stop both his parents and Jessica from visiting. It seems they meet somewhere else now. I know this because after their meetings, my in-laws would call to praise Jessica. Jessica is really admirable, having 3 kids in an era of single children. She even wants more. Really, you should take a page out of your sister's book. It seems that after meeting with Jessica, they decided to make snide comments to me. As far as I was concerned, as long as they didn't come to our house, it was fine. I could just nod along to their phone calls. But around that time, David's behavior began to change. He started coming home late and going out on weekends more often. "I'm just trying to work hard, so I'm a bit busier," he said. But I started to doubt if it was really just work. He would smirk while secretly checking his phone and make calls outside the house. I couldn't help but suspect that he was talking to another woman. Then, after a while of this going on, Jessica contacted me. She was pregnant with her fourth child. When the baby was born, it was a girl. Jessica was overjoyed with her first daughter, as her first 3 children were boys. "We must go celebrate with her. Indeed, it's truly a joyous occasion. We must attend the celebration." With my in-laws saying so, I proposed an idea. "If we're going anyway, why don't we all go together? Let's invite our parents, Jessica's in-laws and relatives. Let's have a grand celebration." "That's a good idea. Susan, you do come up with good ideas sometimes. Let's celebrate in a big way." Once Jessica was feeling better and the baby had settled, we planned a celebration in a private room at a restaurant. The attendees were the guests of honor, Jessica and her husband with the baby, her husband's parents, grandparents, sister and her husband, brother and his wife, our parents, and us, making a total of 17 people, including my in-laws for some reason. Jessica's 3 older children were left with a babysitter. Another one of my suggestions. With so many adults gathered, it might be boring for the kids. Why not have them stay home this time, and we can have a separate celebration for them later? Jessica and her husband thought about it, but I added, "Of course, I'll pay for the sitter. It's part of the celebration." They happily agreed. The private room in the restaurant was decorated with congratulations and arranged so that the family could comfortably celebrate. The first-class restaurant truly offered the best setting. It was perfect for today's celebration. One by one, everyone congratulated Jessica, who was clearly delighted. Her husband, sitting next to her, seemed a bit embarrassed by the grand celebration but thanked everyone with a smile. "Congratulations, Jessica, really, congratulations." "Thank you." No, it's really a joyous occasion. Let me hold the baby too." My in-laws were fussing over her daughter as if it were their own grandchild. "Congratulations, Jessica." "Thank you, David. Here, this is a $6,000 gift for the baby." The relatives were abuzz at the amount. For David, it was an exorbitant sum to give for the baby of his wife's sister. "Thank you," Jessica said as she accepted the envelope as if it were expected, but the murmuring among the relatives didn't subside. Her husband looked confused, glancing between Jessica and David. "David, I can't accept such a large gift." "It's okay, please accept it." "But this is too much." He seemed truly troubled. "It's just a token from David, please accept it." Yes, don't hesitate." My in-laws encouraged him with smiles, but he remained motionless. Then David turned to me. "Tell him to accept it, Susan. Come on, quickly, tell him not to hesitate." "Don't hesitate?" "Yes, of course." Since they said not to hesitate, I spoke my mind without holding back. "I think it's strange too. Giving $6,000 to your own child." My words stirred up more commotion among the relatives. "What are you saying? That's Jessica's husband's baby." "Yeah, what nonsense are you talking about? It sounds like you're saying the baby is mine." David and my in-laws responded in a flurry, but I was clear in my reply. "What? Isn't the baby yours? Why would you say otherwise? Huh?" My words turned the celebration into chaos. "What are you talking about? It's okay, no need to hide it." I said this and pulled out a bundle of photos from my bag. "Here, everyone, have a look." I scattered them like confetti. "What are you doing? What's this?" The photos clearly showed David and Jessica in compromising, unmistakably adulterous positions. "Why do you have these photos? Why would you do this?" Jessica and David scrambled to pick them up, but it was impossible to gather all the dozens of photos. Her husband picked up a few. "Don't look!" Jessica snatched them from her husband's hand, but it was too late. He had seen the evidence of his wife's infidelity. The commotion wasn't limited to Jessica and David. My in-laws turned pale and froze. "Thank you, my dear in-laws." What for?" I thanked them with a beaming smile. "Thanks to you too, I was able to take these photos. I'm truly grateful." The in-laws exchanged confused glances. David's behavior had started to change around the time he and Jessica began meeting outside. The timing was too good, and though I had suspicions, part of me couldn't believe it. It seemed unthinkable for a man to have such relations with his wife's sister. Despite the classic signs of infidelity, I didn't know who the other person was and was pondering how to get proof when I noticed something odd. On days when my in-laws made strange calls, David's behavior was off, and Jessica would drop off her kids at our parents'. So, I hired a detective agency to watch David and Jessica on those days. The cycle was somewhat predictable, and though not certain, I had a good guess of when it might happen. Had I not known when to watch, the costs would have been substantial. Thanks to you, I saved a lot on the investigation fees. I really appreciate it. I thanked my in-laws sincerely. Jessica, what is this all about? It's not what it looks like. What do you mean it's not what it looks like? And this child, is it David's? What does that mean? Her husband trembled. Jessica, just admit it already. That's right, let's just tell the truth now. Eh? David jumped at his parents' words. Susan, it's all your fault. Yes, all your fault. My in-laws sneered at me. We know, you've been going to a gynecologist, haven't you? Yes, you have a difficult time conceiving. And you kept quiet about it. David was deceived into marrying a woman who can't bear children. They questioned David, but he remained silent. David is too kind, even now, he's protecting such a wife. Just tell the truth, no need to hold back. Then, they revealed the truth. They had always disliked me for not quitting my job and not showing signs of wanting children. When they pressured David to divorce, he had said, "Just wait a bit longer, Susan is undergoing fertility treatment to have a child." They tolerated it, thinking I might want a child. But there were no signs of pregnancy. Then we met Jessica. She already had 3 children. Yes, clearly capable of bearing children. So we asked her to have a child with David and planned to have him marry after divorcing you. The relatives were shocked. Me included. So you helped Jessica and David to have an affair, that's it? Yes, and once she had the child, you and David were to divorce, and he would remarry Jessica. You're no longer needed, just divorce David already. I was stunned by their audacity. Yes, I plan to divorce David. A man who cheats with his own sister-in-law is useless to me. Just making excuses. Good for you, David, now you can live with Jessica and your daughter as a family. The in-laws were overjoyed, but David just turned pale and trembled. I never planned to divorce Susan. What are you saying? The in-laws and Jessica were stunned at his unexpected words. That makes sense, doesn't it? If we divorced, you couldn't afford a comfortable lifestyle anymore. David continued to tremble, unable to respond. The truth was, David earned a meager salary. His company, based on meritocracy, rewarded high sales with higher pay, but David, with poor sales performance, was at risk of losing his job at any moment. It's a lie. David works for a major manufacturer, doesn't he? I heard he was earning a lot. He's a contract worker at a subsidiary of a major manufacturer. Eh? That was the truth. David, unable to find a job after college, managed to get hired as a contract worker at his current company. The promise of becoming a permanent employee if he performed well turned out to be an empty one in a black company. I felt sorry for him. But if that were the case, he should have looked for a new job or tried to improve his performance instead of just complaining and doing nothing. I was told he worked for a major manufacturer too. But I didn't choose to marry him for his company. I believed him when he said he was working hard to become a permanent employee. So you lied. You liar. Jessica slapped David hard, and he tried to escape but couldn't avoid the blow. I thought you were a high earner. What am I supposed to do with your child I was deceived into having? That's okay, the child definitely isn't David's. I decided to tell everyone the truth. I indeed went to a fertility clinic. But it wasn't me who had the problem, it was David. That was the fact. After being blamed by my in-laws for not having children, we had tests done, and I was fine. When David was tested, it turned out he was almost certainly infertile. But a certain male celebrity underwent severe treatments and managed to have a child. I asked David to undergo the same, but he refused because it was painful. Everyone turned to look at David, but he just hung his head in silence. So, whose child is Jessica's then? Normally, it would be her husband's. But knowing Jessica, I can't be certain of that. My mother-in-law collapsed to the floor in dismay. And my father-in-law trembled with rage. But there's a slim chance that it could be David's. It seems he thought so too. So, a DNA test might be a good idea. Yes, we need to clarify whose child it is. It's definitely your child. We're not doing any tests. Despite the desperate words from my brother-in-law, my sister's pleas were in vain, and it was clear that such arguments wouldn't change the situation. And so, the celebration for the newborn ended in chaos. I didn't want to expose this kind of scene to anyone. That's why I didn't bring my nephews to this gathering. Regardless of who the father might be, there was no fault on the part of the children. I couldn't subject them to such a distressing situation, and that's what I believed. Fortunately, the child my sister had just given birth to was indeed my brother-in-law's. Hearing this was a relief. Even for this new child, there was no blame to be placed. My sister, upon learning the result, became defiant, asserting that she wouldn't get a divorce and would continue to live with my brother-in-law just as before. However, the fact that she had an affair with another man was an undeniable truth. My brother-in-law decided to take custody of the newborn daughter and the nephew who was just slightly older. My sister vehemently resisted, but I provided the results I had obtained from the private investigator. With no other choice, she had to agree to the divorce. It's your fault. You're the reason I'm getting divorced. They're demanding alimony and child support from me. How are you going to make this right? My sister came to my place, shouting in anger, but I was the one who had been wronged here. She had no right to complain to me. If you want to talk, can you go through a lawyer? I'll be claiming alimony from you too. What? Shouldn't you know that it's only natural when you have an affair with someone else's husband? My sister was making a ruckus, but when I told her that I would call the police if she continued to cause trouble, she left in a huff. Come to think of it, I had a misunderstanding about my sister's first divorce. I had thought that our parents had paid the alimony on her behalf. As it turned out, the cause of both divorces was my sister's infidelity. In reality, instead of paying alimony, she had offset it against child support. Both husbands had wanted to take custody of the children during the divorces, but my sister, who was after child support, had vehemently refused to give them up. As a result, she didn't receive any child support, but in return, she didn't have to pay alimony either. However, this time, both of the older children, the boys, were taken by their biological fathers. Fortunately, they turned out to be the children of their respective fathers. For my sister, it might be considered a miraculous turn of events, and perhaps even God believes that the children are innocent. In exchange for giving up custody of her son, my sister is now in a position where she will have to pay child support. It's possible that she may also have to pay alimony. Until now, she had been offsetting alimony with child support, so with the change in circumstances, I heard that there would be a need for a new discussion and negotiation. My sister lost all her children and the support of those who had been taking care of her. From now on, she would have to make the payments herself. She had never worked before and had lived as she pleased. Now, the consequences had caught up with her all at once. My sister went to our parents for help, but even they couldn't forgive her this time. They told her that her past actions were because they had raised her wrong, and with tears in their eyes. They advised her to find a live-in job, work diligently, and turn her life around. However, it was unclear whether my sister truly understood this advice. After all, my sister, who learned the truth later, even came to me in tears, which was quite surprising. Both my in-laws and my sister believed that David was a high earner. So, my sister confessed that she had intended to abandon her ordinary office worker husband, Bob, and remarry David once she had children. But it was a lie. I was deceived too. In other words, I'm the victim of your husband. The real high earner was you. So, please help me, I beg you. Yes, our family, which they thought was living a good life, was all thanks to my income. I'm highly regarded as a programmer. The work from my original company is like a form of gratitude. The real income comes from the sales of the programs I developed personally. People all over the world use it, and I have a substantial monthly income without doing anything. However, because David cried and begged, I kept this a secret. It's a matter of a man's pride, that's why. Now that I think about it, I can't remember at all what was good about David. Somehow, I feel like the fact that he was flawed in some way was cute, but it's fine now. I've come to understand that a bad man is just a bad person. David didn't want to get a divorce and cried, resisting it. Perhaps he thought that, like before, if he cried, he could somehow manage to get through it. What I love, is only you. Oh, really? Even though you cheated on your sister? No, that's because my parents told me to, and that's why I wanted a child. David claimed unbelievable things and used it as an excuse for his infidelity. So, I really believed that it was my child. I forgot that I had a body that couldn't have children. If I had remembered, I wouldn't have done it. It's truly exasperating. David, with his man's pride, apparently couldn't believe it. Even that $6,000, my parents told me to give it, so that's why I did. I didn't give it with celebratory feelings. I haven't paid a penny. David boldly asserts such an embarrassing thing. It's not something an adult would say. I felt exhausted, feeling all the strength drained from my body. Talking to him any further would be pointless. That's enough. Does that mean you'll forgive me? No, of course not. You don't need to say anything else. I'm not going to listen anymore. I told David to go through a lawyer from now on and kicked him out of the house. I have no intention of letting him inside anymore. I'll send all that trash to my parents' house in one go. Of course, with postage due. Afterward, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly, and I finally became a free woman. Of course, I made sure he paid alimony. He asked for it to be divided, but I couldn't trust him at all. He definitely stopped paying halfway through. When I mentioned that if he couldn't pay all at once, we'd have to go to court, he somehow managed to come up with the full payment. Maybe my in-laws paid it, but money is money no matter where it comes from, so I accepted it gratefully. Now, my in-laws won't criticize me, and I won't have to listen to David's pathetic complaints anymore. I didn't want to hear anything about David's child, but it seems that the world is small, or maybe it's impossible to do bad things, as my sister's acquaintance is a neighbor of my in-laws, and what my in-laws did spread like wildfire. Nowadays, my in-laws are famous as the dreadful couple who facilitated their son's affair with his wife's sister, and David is known as the good-for-nothing husband who cheats at his parents' bidding. They can't show their faces and have become pariahs in the neighborhood. Additionally, the news of this scandal reached David's workplace, making it difficult for him to work. He eventually resigned and has been trying to find a new job, but it hasn't been going well. I heard that he's mostly holed up at his parents' house now. But all of this doesn't matter to me as long as they don't come into contact with me. They are no longer part of my life. I felt a sense of relief as I tidied up the house. As planned, I started packing up David's belongings one by one to send them to his parents' house. I found myself humming a tune, enjoying the task. It's so much better now. I looked around the house, which had become less cluttered, and thought it was good that I could get rid of things I didn't need. They say that when you dispose of unnecessary things, new things come into the empty space, bringing good fortune. My house originally had plenty of space, but perhaps because of that one room and one person, luck hadn't been circulating. I opened all the windows in the house. It was winter, and the cold wind swept through the house, but it helped clear out the last traces of bad air. In the room that had now become completely empty, the room of my ex-husband, whose name I had already forgotten, I took a deep breath of the new air. Even in the cold breeze, it felt like there was a hint of spring in the air. I sensed that the bright season was just around the corner.